What happens when two mage sisters take their rivalry too far? You get Mahotsukai no Yoru, or Witch on the Holy Night. Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun, Dai here. After over a decade of waiting, Western-type Moon fans finally have access to an English version of Mahotsukai no Yoru. We are now basking in a luxury that, just a year or two ago, seemed like a pipe dream. While I haven't been able to stream the entire thing for you guys, I'm not too upset, since it's widely available for you to purchase for yourselves, whether that be through Aniplex's North American release, or by importing the Japanese HD version, which has the same English subtitles. I highly recommend you play it, as that's the best way to experience this gorgeous addition to the Nasuverse. For my part, I'll do my best to compile all the relevant lore into a condensed video for you guys. Naturally, it will contain spoilers for literally everything, so bear that in mind and proceed with caution. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to like, comment, share, and smash that subscription bell so you don't miss out on any of my releases. If you can, please consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button or visiting the links listed in the description. Going forward, I'll just be calling this visual novel Witch on the Holy Night. It's actually rather fitting, given that this is one of the few entries in the Nasuverse that deals with witches. One question I get asked a lot is whether this is part of the same universe as Fate and such. The answer is yes, basically. The simple explanation is that, while the Fate story has mages going nuts with Holy Grail wars in Fuyuki, other Japanese towns have their own mage adventures. Kana no Kyokai, for instance, had Shiki Ryogi dealing with mystic eyes of death perception in Mifune City. Similarly, Witch on the Holy Night tells the story of mages in Misaki Town during the late 80s. That means it takes place prior to Kana no Kyokai, Fate Stay Night, and Tsukihime. In the original Tsukihime, Misaki Town is also where Shikitono and Arcoade fought against Nero Chaos and Roa, though the Tsukihime remake decided to change that setting to a city called Soya. The underlying conflict of Witch on the Holy Night focuses on two sisters, Aoko and Touko Aozaki. They are the fifth generation of Aozaki mages, inheriting the family magecraft from their grandfather. The fourth generation, Aoko's father, wasn't born with suitable magic circuits. Instead, their lineage skipped a generation, considering both Aoko and Touko have the potential to become very powerful mages. Problem is, as you may have seen with the Tosakas, mage families usually only pass their craft on to a single heir. This has everything to do with magic crests, a physical mark of a family's collective abilities. There's only so much any given mage can accomplish in one lifetime, so they instead prepare and accumulate their knowledge in order to pass it down to their next of kin. The magic crest contains the spells and techniques given from parent to child, allowing for later generations to take the family craft to even greater heights. There are rare cases where a family may opt to share the magic crest between two siblings, but by and large that's not very efficient. Rather, mage families with two or more suitable children typically pick one to train as a mage and inherit the crest, leaving the other children to live ordinary lives. Between the two sisters, Touko is an absolute prodigy. Her magic circuits are more potent, and as the older sibling, she had a head start honing her skills. It made the most sense to name her the successor, and that's exactly what her grandfather did, at first anyway. Everyone seemed content with this agreement. Aoko wasn't really upset for not being chosen, and for 15 years, she grew up as an ordinary schoolgirl. On extremely short notice, however, Aoko's grandfather then changed his mind, naming her the successor. She would immediately begin her training and was sent to study under a family acquaintance. Understandably, this broke Touko's heart. Many would consider her the ideal mage, and the thought of her not inheriting her own family's crest seemed ridiculous and wasteful. Enraged, Touko took off and went to train on her own at the clock tower in London. While it certainly sucks for Touko not to get the Aozaki crest, this decision came with a much more hefty consequence. Orthodox mages typically have one singular goal in life: to reach the swirl of the root, a metaphysical place where all things that exist emerge from and eventually return to. It contains the Akashic Records, a chronology of all knowledge from the past, present, and future. In addition, mages who reach the root and live to tell the tale come back with a miraculous ability called true magic. Magecraft by itself is cool. It lets us manipulate the physical world, but ultimately, that ability has its limits. True magic, on the other hand, is a set of abilities that truly defies the rules of reality, allowing for the realization of miracles. These miracles include time travel, access to parallel worlds, and materializing a person's soul so that it can survive independently from its body. Needless to say, mages want to get their hands on one of these true magics, even as the planet itself employs countermeasures to prevent them from reaching the root. Turns out, Touko's grandfather discovered a path to the root, one that would allow the family to access the fifth magic, also known as Magic Blue. He chose Aoko to be the heir because, supposedly, she was more compatible with the fifth magic than her sister. Her grandfather was hesitant to actually use the path he discovered, reasoning it would be better for a successor to attempt it. Thus, he sealed the path off to anyone but Aoko. Essentially, Touko was closer to true magic and the root than any other mage of her generation, and in a single night, due to a single decision, that glorious opportunity was stolen out from under her and instead given to her novice sister. It's not so much that Touko despises her sister on a personal level, but she does make it her goal to try and take back what she feels she deserves. This makes Touko the story's antagonist. Her goal is to take back control of the city, and in turn, reopen her path to the fifth magic. You see, mages establish the land and its ley lines as their territory. They set up bounded fields around their turf and keep watch over the land. In return, these mages benefit from that land, and it makes their spells more potent and reliable. The Aozaki family presides over the land surrounding Misaki Town. They don't own the land in a financial sense, but their barrier around the town makes them the spiritual administrators of it and all its fertile mana. This barrier is maintained by various sigils placed around the perimeter. For Touko to dissolve the barrier, or change its ownership, she would have to take control of or dismantle these various sigils. This story starts 2 years after Touko was rejected as the family's heir, and with plenty of tricks up her sleeve, she's come back to town, working in secret to contest all the sigils. On the other end of the conflict, Aoko has spent these last 2 years balancing her school life and her new role as a mage. Rather than living at her own house, learning from her grandfather, she instead lives with and trains under a friend of the family, the Kuonjis. More specifically, Aoko is the apprentice of Alice Kuonji, one of the world's last remaining witches. In the Nasuverse, a witch is not merely a female mage. No. Instead, witches are practically a separate race that practices witchcraft, a subsection of magecraft that specializes in curses and black magic. Alice's mother was the last pure-blood witch of the long-lasting Meinster family. It's implied that Alice and her mother are descendants of Yumina, a powerful witch born literally the night before the death of Christ. While very little is known about the first true magic, we do know that Yumina was the first to obtain it. Sadly, it seems Alice is a far cry from what her ancestors used to be. When Alice's mother married into the Kuonji family, she worried that falling in love with a human man would result in suffering for them and their newborn child. Sure enough, Alice's mother died shortly after childbirth, and after years of ridicule, her father also passed away, leaving her with the family's wealth and estate. This mansion sits atop a steep hill leading into the mountains around Misaki Town, and even though Alice does her best to conceal her magecraft from the populace, rumors still spread that her house is haunted. Alice's mother became friends with the Aozakis when she became a naturalized Japanese citizen. This friendship is what allows Alice and her home to remain in Misaki, and it's also why Alice agreed to instruct Aoko. While Aoko isn't a witch, there is much that Alice can teach her as a fellow mage. Even as far as mages go, Alice's inherited style and techniques are very unique. Rather than fighting her own battles, Alice functions through using magical familiars. You can think of a familiar as a mage's servant or pet, usually created from a deceased animal to do their bidding. Alice has an ensemble of specialized familiars called Ploy Kickshaws. Each one is based on a fairy tale or nursery rhyme. It's no surprise then that Alice's mother named her after Alice in Wonderland, taking special interest in the works of Lewis Carroll and Mother Goose. Some of these ploys are inventions Alice makes herself, and others are rare artifacts passed down her family line. Let's go ahead and break each of these ploys down. By far, her most common ploy is Diddle Diddle, Banquet of the Night, a trinket she uses to deepen the night and enhance all her other ploys. It can also summon knives, forks, spoons, and plates as weapons based on the rhyme. Next, from Alice Through the Looking Glass, there's Second Ticket, Mirror of Slumber. By repurposing a broken mirror that served as a portal to a separate world, Alice can create a map of Misaki Town. It lets her monitor the city like a magic security system. Shaping this map like a game board lets her place Nameless Forest, another ploy shaped like a chess piece, at various points in the city to deter humans from entering restricted areas. This allows Aoko and Alice to conduct their business without being seen, or at least that's what it's normally used for. It's still a broken mirror, and occasionally creates foggy portals around the mansion that unsuspecting guests might accidentally wander into. Jack in the Box, 6 Singing Chocolates, is a box of chocolates that stores 24 bird familiars that fly about Misaki Town as monitor drones. They can't fight, and they often die on their own by running into telephone poles and such. In a bind, however, Alice can melt them into her wounds as first aid. Speaking of birds, she inherited a ploy called Lost Robin Rondo from her late mother. Based on the Cock Robin nursery rhyme, Robin is a talking blue bird that flies around like a scout. He's generally pretty useless, but he does have the ability to turn into Alice's body double and take a hit for her. This trick can only be used once, so in pretty much every other case, Robin is an annoyance. Based off the rhyme Humpty Dumpty, Alice has a large, egg-shaped time bomb named Scratch Dumpty. When invoked, Scratch Dumpty follows a given target from above. It activates when its target looks away from it, or when its timer runs out. Upon detonation, Scratch Dumpty curses its victims. Tweedledee and Tweedledum are ploys that come in a pair. Initially, they start off as a pair of dice, and depending on what number Alice rolls, they transform into different creatures. While they have the ability to turn into humans and other forms, Alice has only ever rolled 6s, which turn them into piglets with scissor jaws that devour and sever their victims. Sweetheart's Wishing Egg is an obscure ploy that Alice never really uses herself. It tempts people with their deepest desires, and when someone eats it, it impersonates them and goes about trying to grant their wish through a twisted game. Among Alice's ploys are the Great Three, ploys created by the first generation of Meinster witches that have been passed down for over 1,000 years. Being that old, they've accumulated great mystery, easily serving as her strongest assets. One of the Great Three ploys is the Thames Troll, a massive golem based on the London Bridges song. As the song describes, bridges can be built of wood, stone, metal, or silver and gold, depending on how modern technology develops. In turn, the troll has 4 unique stages, each getting more and more powerful. Despite its tremendous strength, Alice struggles to use it. For one, it can only be activated near a body of natural water. That, and Alice herself isn't fond of modern civilization, resulting in her troll never growing past its second state. Arguably, her most powerful ploy of the Great Three is Flat Snark, Oil of the Moon. As the name implies, it is a vial filled with the fat of a nomadic god, and when poured out, it becomes the titular creature from the hunting of the Snark. It functions by creating a massive bounded field akin to a reality marble that transforms the enclosed area into a fairy tale kingdom. Inanimate objects come to life and attack its victims. The only way to defeat Flat Snark is to find and destroy its true form, an emerald skull that hides in the fog among its creations. The most mysterious of her ploys is the third of her Great Three, called Wandersnatch, Rose Hound. It is a beast made of fog that emerges with countless hungry mouths to absolutely massacre Alice's foes. It's a destructive calamity that floats in the fog and mauls entire armies. When Alice isn't attending her private all-girls school, she stays in her mansion like a recluse, dedicating her time to replenishing any ploys that she uses while defending the town's sigils. She has very few friends, one of which being her childhood rival May Riddell Archelot. When they were kids, May convinced Alice to give proper names to all her ploys. After borrowing her 6th ploy, a perfume named Goblin Frawn that forces its wearer to only speak in swears and slang. Before they had names, Alice would often mix them up, which was both humiliating and dangerous. May has grown up to be an extremely rich, spoiled woman who funds her endeavors by performing as an idol. In secret, she practices black magic and has a spell called Goblin Nest that mysteriously uses goblins to aid her in a variety of situations. Needless to say, since Aoko's not a witch, she can't create or use ploys the way that Alice can. Honestly, as far as general magecraft is concerned, Aoko's circuits aren't nearly as good as her sister's. Instead, she gains her strength as a mage from a unique feature from her magic circuits that causes them to rotate at an extreme speed. It more than makes up for the low capacity of her circuits, instead channeling mana with insane efficiency, enough to make her 100 times more efficient than the average mage. This means that, even as a novice with only 2 years of training, Aoko has proven herself extremely capable when taking simple incantations to their extreme. When I say capable, I mean destructive, as direct combat is all she's really good at. In that regard, she mixes martial arts with magic bullets. Technically, she also has access to the fifth magic. Its path is open to her, but without experience, she could easily find herself consumed by the root, or perhaps killed by the planet's counterforce. For the past 2 years, she's seen visions of a red doppelganger that watches her from behind. The novel never directly explains this red figure, but most fans theorize it as a symbol of the counterforce, warning her not to tempt fate. Mages are often ruthless in their pursuit of power, but Aoko has a hard time committing to that culture. Despite her harsh exterior, she really does care about other living creatures, which is demonstrated when, as a child, she tried to save a kitten that was hiding in her dad's car and got mangled by the engine. Lil Aoko took the kitten to her grandfather, who told her that not even magecraft can bring back the dead, not in the way she wanted anyway. Otherwise, we're channeling some of that pet cemetery madness. As a result, Aoko still values her everyday life, taking an active role in her community. She's the student council president of her high school, working alongside the vice president, Tobimaru Tsukiji. He's a rather jaded dude, born as the 5th son of a wealthy family that owns several plots of land in the city. His grandfather, Kimikuni Tsukiji, married into the family and saved it from financial ruin. Most of Kimikuni's grandchildren were born through marriages within the family, but Tobimaru's a black sheep, the child of his father's mistress. Because of this, he was treated as an outsider by his own family, but Kimikuni, who shared that same outsider mentality, took a special liking to him. As a result, Tobimaru's relatives went from seeing him as a pathetic outsider to a major threat to their inheritance. He uses his school life as an escape from dealing with his resentful and abusive family, hoping to start fresh and follow his own path. Tobimaru is popular among his fellow classmates, including the delinquent Hosuke Kinomi. He's not a sketchy dude or anything, just a total spaz who happens to work part-time at a Chinese restaurant. He's obsessed with pretty girls and dreams of getting rich. I can get behind that. Another hardworking student is Kojika Kumari, who happens to be Hosuke's childhood friend and next-door neighbor. She's much more serious, mainly because she seems to struggle more. Kojika wants to attend college, but her dad insists that she stick around to inherit the family business. After her brothers stepped in to convince him, her dad caved in and gave her permission to enroll in a local university. Secretly, however, she's aiming for a college in the city and works part-time to save up for her living expenses. Considering she too wants to forge her own path, Kojika has an unrequited crush on Tobimaru. There's a part of her that feels she's burning away her youth, studying and working so hard when she could be out having fun and a love life. Instead, she works at her job, her studies, and her duties as a student council treasurer. She claims to hate animals, but she nevertheless knows a lot about them. Because she cares for her rowdy brothers, she's perhaps the most responsible member of the cast, even more so than their teacher, Kazuki Yamashiro, who is laid back enough to push responsibilities onto the student council. Through the student council, Aoko has built up a solid network of classmates, which helps her stand out as ordinary. Well, ordinary in the sense that nobody would suspect her of being a mage. Her unpleasant demeanor intimidates her peers. Once, she and Tobimaru got into a fistfight, and she took a hit to the face like a champ. To be fair, she deals with far worse in her training. Kojika seems to be the only classmate who has seen Aoko's softer side, and she carries around a candid picture of Aoko in a bunny suit as a token of their friendship. Oddly enough, Aoko's hidden status as a spiritual administrator of Misaki is recognized by the Holy Church. The Aozakis are an independent mage family, not officially allied with the Mages Association. Even though the church despises mages, they accept Aoko's dominion as the path of least resistance. It's worth noting that this particular church is full of some unique characters that set it apart from the rest. For example, its head priest, Eri Fumizuka, has close ties to the Aozaki family. Back when he was younger, he studied spirits under the tutelage of Aoko's grandfather. There, he met Touko, and he became her first love. Ironically, he would turn his own mentor on spirits into a spirit, spontaneously murdering Touko's grandfather with a single sword slash. Presumably, it was because the old man made Touko cry by choosing Aoko as the next heir, but he also seems to be the type who will kill someone simply because the opportunity presents itself. So yeah, don't fuck with the clergy. This dude's always packing 3 blades under his cape, and is skilled enough to conceal his malice. Perhaps he and Kirei would be the best of friends. Anyway, ever since Eri killed her grandfather, Touko has abandoned her feelings for him. Oh, and don't worry, as we all know, the Nasuverse is not a place where people die when they are killed. Despite being cleaved, Mr. Aozaki lingers in a spiritual form with a depleted sense of self. Eri's colleague at the church is Yuika Suse, a blind nun who makes up for her lack of sight by sensing people's ill intent. She's well respected in town as a pious nun, but those that know her more closely realize that beneath her unassuming presence is a more frightening woman. She's far from evil though, just very assertive when she needs to be. Despite her blindness, she's also a talented surgeon. Yuika's sister is Ritsuka Suse, who happens to be a double agent for both the church and Mages Association. She's been living in Misaki Town for 10 years, ever since the Aozaki family discovered a path to the root. On the surface, she appears to be an airhead, and she may well be, but she's been monitoring the Aozakis to make sure they don't try anything crazy. As a mage, Ritsuka practices black magic, but she's not very active with it. Aoko, Alice, and other students from school do volunteer work for the church. As I said before, the church would normally be enemies to mages, but this particular establishment is a place that Aoko and Alice can go to in an emergency. That said, the church doesn't take an active stance when Touko comes to town to try and claim it as her own. It doesn't help that Touko could easily kill them all if she wanted to. Taking refuge in an old school building on the verge of collapse, Touko slowly plots her sister's demise. She may not have her family's crest, but she's made up for that in spades. Even in her teens, Touko had experience working with Alice's late mother, helping her make Ploy Kickshaws. Going above and beyond her studies, Touko specialized in runes at the clock tower, going on to restore many rune characters that were thought to be lost to time. Her work quickly rose her to the rank of Grand, which happens to be the highest rank the clock tower has to offer. As if that weren't enough, she studied human anatomy, mastering the art of doll making, or automata. As we know from Kara no Kyokai, Touko eventually reaches the point where she can construct a fully functioning replica of her own body. It's so identical that one cannot tell which of the 2 bodies is the real one. To make up for her lack of a magic crest, Touko has found a controversial way of borrowing the crests of other mages. Basically, she'll challenge other mages in combat, and when she wins, she takes them captive at a hidden facility where she pays for their expenses and even feeds them pleasant memories. She keeps her captives alive, modifying their magic crests so that she can vicariously use them. Obviously, this is less efficient than using her own crest, but since she doesn't have one, she makes do with this insane setup, and it proves to be quite powerful. On top of that, Touko was born with mystic eyes of enchantment, which have the power to charm and hypnotize their targets. Technically, it's only her left eye that has this ability, but it's still hella useful. It gives her the same kind of suggestion that Arcuade and other vampires have. As an absolute mad lad, Touko modified her own eye, installing a second set of mystic eyes that reflect off one another. As her gaze bounces off itself like a mirror, it gathers strength, amplifying its effectiveness indefinitely. Even with everything I just mentioned, Touko still has her trump card to play, a familiar called Lug Beowulf. Beo here is a nature spirit who manifested in a village of werewolves back in the 18th century. These werewolves were in decline, struggling to maintain their former glory. They originated from a powerful golden werewolf, but they've never seen another gold one ever since. When Beo emerged, he took the form of a golden werewolf, making the villagers think they could mate with him and revive their legacy. As a nature spirit, though, Beo isn't actually a real werewolf, and because he lacks a defined gender, he cannot produce. When the villagers figured this out, they ostracized him, and when Touko came around, they decided to sell him to her. Before returning to Misaki, she made Beo her partner, and the two went on a couple of adventures in Europe. Until Touko makes her move, Beo is stuck hanging around the abandoned school, forced to take on a human shape to avoid suspicion. There, he gets to experience Touko's odd personality, or should I say personalities. Basically, Touko has 2 different personalities, and she switches between them based on whether her glasses are on or off. With the glasses on, she behaves friendly and cordially, But when she takes them off, she becomes serious and objective. It's likely that her pleasant side emerged from a need to navigate social situations, but at this point, she can't say which of the two is her true persona. At the very least, Bayo knows he can get his favorite hamburgers when she's in a good mood. So yeah, Touko and Bayo are hiding out at Misaki's old abandoned school building. They've been slowly trying to reclaim the town from Aoko by first attacking the different sigils that maintain the town's bounded field. Touko does this remotely, sending her puppet familiars to attack on her behalf. Despite her fame as a master doll maker, neither Aoko nor Alice seem to identify her as the culprit. The two simply continue to repair and defend the sigils when they come under fire. If left alone, Touko would eventually make her move and totally mop the floor with her sister. But there's still one last element we need to talk about that throws a wrench into the whole machine. By that, I'm referring to Soujuro Shizuki, a figurative Joker card in all of this. He appears demure, but is actually one of the most badass dudes in the Nasuverse. For all his life, Soujuro was raised in a rural village deep in the mountains. He and his people had no access to electricity, and he lived by a survival of the fittest mentality. He had no aspirations for the future, as each and every day was exactly the same process. For years, he never thought to question this life, until one day, he noticed one of the villagers died after falling from a cliff during the night. Everyone was too preoccupied with surviving day to day to really feel sad about it. Death was so normal to him, whether it be from animal attacks or starvation. Half of his time was spent procuring food, and the other half was dedicated to self-defense. He was taught to observe both his own movements and those of animals, to the point where he could sense even the slightest changes. It was intense training that would sometimes last days at a time before he'd even notice time had passed. During this training, Soujuro was attacked by a pack of wolves. They proceeded to maul him, scarring both his arm and neck. In time, however, Soujuro learned to fight all manner of dangerous predators with only his bare hands. This training was suspicious as hell, likely for some other purpose. It was as if he were being groomed to perform a specific job. Eventually, he asked one of the village elders about why they live in such a way, and he was told that it's always been this way, and that there's no reason to stop. Perhaps because Soujuro thought to question his lifestyle, the elder set him up to leave the mountains and start living in Misaki Town. If any of this sounds familiar, it's because Soujuro's design was later repurposed into the character of Soichiro Kuzuki in Fate Stay Night. Kuzuki-sensei had a similar upbringing, though in that story it was obvious he was being trained as an assassin. In Soujuro's case, the purpose of his mountain lifestyle is never clarified, though it definitely seems less nefarious. Either this was just their way of surviving against wild animals, or perhaps they used to be like Kuzuki's village, trained as assassins, and eventually lost track of that original purpose. If Soujuro really were meant to be an assassin, I kinda doubt his elder would just have him leave and become a normal part of society. Either way, going with the flow, Soujuro accepts this opportunity and begins experiencing modern society for the very first time. He knows nothing about technology, but luckily his social skills are enough to help him navigate this problem. In order to pay for rent at his apartment, he works a handful of part-time jobs. At first, he started at a convenience store, working with Kojika, but after he sucked with the cash register, she helped him find a job working with Hosuke as a dishwasher at the Chinese restaurant. Despite being a minor, he scores a job working at a pachinko parlor, where he first sees Touko and is horrified by her malicious aura. He also used to work at an abandoned theme park called Kitsyland. It was a failed project created by an old man named Yurihiko Tokitsu, who happens to be friends with Alice and Tobimaru through their familial connections. The old man laments how the park went bankrupt, and he worries he designed its mascot, Kitsy, poorly. Initially, Soujuro doesn't have much of a sense of self, but he eventually develops a kind and peaceful persona, which helps him with one job where he essentially serves as a surrogate son for a wealthy old woman. He takes her money, but eventually gives it back, feeling it's not right to take advantage of her loneliness. Soujuro first meets Aoko when he applies to attend school. It's odd for a guy in his shoes, without any prior education, to suddenly start at a private high school, but Mr. Yamashiro thinks that, with the right friends and environment, he can make up for lost time. As the student council president, Yamashiro has Aoko escort Soujuro around the school. Her first impression of him is that he's clueless and annoying, but he, on the other hand, is inspired by her confidence and forwardness. The two would likely never interact much, that is, without something else to bring them together. That something happens to be Alice's oversight. When she uses her chess piece, Nameless Woods, to establish bounded fields around the city, she is able to ward off intruders, almost like a Jedi mind trick. It's how she practices magecraft in the city without being discovered. For ordinary humans, this works perfectly, but Soujuro isn't normal by a long shot. Without fully getting accustomed to society, he qualifies more as a product of nature than a willful human. Since Nameless Woods doesn't work on natural things, it fails to deter Soujuro one night while Alice and Aoko are fighting one of Touko's dolls. He witnesses Aoko light the doll on fire, and it's only a matter of time before the two mages figure out he was the one who saw them. Sadly, there's a rule among mages that demands they keep magecraft a secret. It's less about it being for society's benefit, and more based on the fact that, ironically, the more people who understand magecraft, the less powerful it becomes. Magecraft is fueled by mystery, and human knowledge is what kills that mystery. To prevent Soujuro from exposing magecraft, Alice and Aoko plan to kill him. It's nothing that Alice isn't used to, but she entrusts Aoko to take care of it since Soujuro's her classmate. Problem is, Aoko's never killed anyone before. She's only ever fought familiars. Nonetheless, she convinces Soujuro to meet her at Kitsyland and chases him into the Hall of Mirrors. She fires off her magic bullets, but he proves to be decent at evading them. It's as if she's playing with her prey, but that dynamic changes when Aoko is attacked by another automata, one that looks suspiciously like her. It's of course Touko's doll, but Aoko doesn't suspect it yet. After wasting a decent chunk of her mana trying to shoot Soujuro, she's taken off guard by the doll and hurts her back. She struggles to fight, and in order to survive, she strikes a deal with Soujuro that if he helps her out, she'll stop trying to kill him for the night. Oddly enough, despite being shot at, he doesn't seem to hold a grudge and accepts the offer. His job is to keep the puppet busy on the top floor, while Aoko goes to the basement and destroys the building's support beams. The two will escape before the building collapses on top of the doll. The doll has no interest in Soujuro, so he fails as a diversion. Aoko barely survives being hunted in the basement, but she ultimately makes it out when Soujuro pulls her out of danger. He feels like he failed her, but since he had every opportunity to just let her die in the wreckage, she honors her promise not to kill him. Alice doesn't accept this decision and takes Aoko's new resolve as betrayal. The two seem to get along well enough at home, but now that it's come to this, they wind up fighting to the death over Soujuro's life. When Diddle Diddle's silverware doesn't match up, Alice deploys Flat Snark, bringing all of Kitsyland to life as a deadly fantasy carnival. Aoko protects Soujuro from hordes of bread people, pressuring Alice to whip out Scratch Dumpty and sick it on him. Escape proves impossible, at least if both Aoko and Soujuro want to survive. As such, their only real way out is to find the Snark and kill it. Turns out it's been under their noses the whole time, or rather, they've been under its nose. In the sky, just in front of the moon, Flat Snark looks down upon them, ignoring Alice's orders and opting to cause as much destruction as it wants. Aoko puts a spell on Soujuro that gives him courage before they split up to flatten this damn Snark. Basically, Aoko needs to extend the range and output of her magic bullets, so she has Soujuro climb his way up the park's roller coaster with some strands of her hair. By releasing them from on high, the hairs become a relay point for Aoko's blast, a booster of sorts that takes her bullet and propels it even further. By inscribing a formula on the ground, Aoko builds up enough energy to decimate Snark with a superheated bullet, but just as she's about to win, Snark summons a massive chunk of ice that takes the hit. Under normal circumstances, even this would be way beyond Aoko's capabilities. She was practically out of her own mana back when she was trying to kill Soujuro. However, Flat Snark's bounded field creates a world of fantasy filled with mystery. As its creatures come to life, the area floods with an overwhelming amount of mana. Aoko's attack is essentially acting as a conduit to fire all of Snark's energy back at itself. On the verge of being crushed by the ice, she feels the Red Death beckoning her to tap into her true magic. Perhaps this ominous figure is what Aoko fears becoming if she takes that final step into the world of mystics. Either way, she refuses to give in and realizes she's been hesitating. Instead of relying on true magic she doesn't even know how to use, she instead bets it all on a final attack, pushing herself to her limit. Within her surges enough mana that one wrong move will destroy her, But inspired by Soujuro's courage, she takes her chances, maximizing her formula at the cost of tremendous pain. Rather than borrowing Snark's mana against itself, Aoko now takes the entire stash and sends it hurling back in a surge of energy that obliterates the ice mass. With nothing standing in her path to victory, Aoko fires off a final blast at Snark itself. This style of magecraft is called Starmine and Starbow. It works by creating spells based off her visualization of explosions and rotating stars. This, combined with her magic crest, allows Aoko to be truly destructive. Her long-range bullet melts the remaining ice fragments and punctures Flat Snark, erasing from the world one of Alice's great 3 ploys. Expectedly, this causes her to collapse, and in this moment of vulnerability, Snark retaliates to take her down with it. It launches a final volley of spears that come to kill her. To make matters worse, the doll that attacked her in the House of Mirrors is still alive, slowly inching toward her with only its crushed torso remaining. She's too exhausted to notice, but Soujuro can spot the damn thing from atop the roller coaster. He knows Aoko will be killed if he doesn't act, but she's too far away for him to reach. Thanks to the courage Aoko gave him, though, he gets the insane idea to use Scratch Dumpty as a flotation device. Instead of climbing down the tracks, he leaps off of them and clings to Dumpty as he falls. It acts as a high-speed elevator, safely bringing him to the ground. He continues sprinting to Aoko's aid just as the egg's timer finishes. It detonates, sending cursed shrapnel into Soujuro from behind. It's not enough to halt his stride, though, and he arrives just in time to pull Aoko out of the path of the Snark spears. In her place, the doll catches up and gets annihilated by the spears. Nice. In the aftermath, Kitsyland starts to return to its normal decrepit state. Aoko declares her intent to let Soujuro live, not just for the night, but in general. Thanks to Tobimaru at the student council, she has the idea that Soujuro has fallen in love with her, and when she tries to turn him down, he wonders why she thought he had romantic feelings for her at all. Embarrassed that her rejection turned into a rejection of her, Aoko clobbers Soujuro with a fistful of tsundere angst. It knocks him out, giving her the chance to use a special trinket Alice had given her earlier. It's a tiny jar that can store an entire person, and she uses it to take the unconscious boy back home to the Kuonji mansion. The curse of Scratch Dumpty fades during Soujuro's slumber, showing how he's much more resilient than the average human. While Aoko's victory over Alice lets Soujuro live through the night, it takes a lot of arguing for the 2 mages to decide how to proceed. The only reason they had to kill him was because he witnessed their magecraft and could potentially spread their secret. That problem still stands, so they settle on a plan that can protect their secret while keeping him alive. The easiest solution would be to simply erase his memories of that night, but it'll take time to prepare a spell like that. Surely in her library there exists a way, but they have yet to find it. In the meantime, they agree to keep Soujuro living with them at the mansion, where they can supervise his behavior. They more or less take him prisoner, and then have the nerve to demand he pay rent for his bed in the frickin' attic of all places. Alice is still salty about the arrangement, and doesn't appreciate having a stranger in her house. To prove to him how powerful she is, as if that weren't clear enough from the amusement park, she traps him in a more sophisticated form of the jar that Aoko used to bring him here. She tries to demonstrate how dangerous a position he's in, but he declares he still feels safe, which perplexes her. For a guy who lived isolated from modern civilization all his life, magecraft isn't any more exciting or surprising than the tech he's encountered in the city. In general, Soujuro is given the freedom to attend school and his part-time jobs, so long as he returns before a set curfew. Alice still hasn't accepted him, and so his first mission as a new tenant is to get on her good side. Until then, he needs to survive the mansion's various traps and mystical tools, such as the mirror that threatens to whisk him away to its pocket dimension. Furthermore, Robin, Alice's ploy familiar, despises him and takes its every opportunity to peck at him in the hallways. With exams coming up, Aoko forces him to cram all night while she tutors him, which seems really pointless given they plan to wipe his memory. Maybe they can be very selective about it. During the daytime, Alice has a tendency to take naps at odd places in the mansion, which makes it hard for Soujuro to actually befriend her. The fact that he finds her sleeping and doesn't wake her, or accidentally messes up brewing her expensive tea leaves, only seems to make things worse. Thankfully, though, his many attempts to get closer to Alice ultimately pay off, as she too wants the drama to end. Truthfully, Alice finds Soujuro rather fascinating, given how she saw him jump off the roller coaster and how he doesn't try to bring up the bandage around his neck for pity. Even as her mirror threatens to swallow him up during the night, she instructs Robin to keep him safe from it. At school, Soujuro becomes good friends with Tobimaru and Hosuke, and one day while the three are volunteering to pick up trash near the old school building, Soujuro spots Bayo entering the building. The golden-haired boy stands out as odd, but Soujuro has no reason to suspect anything yet. To welcome him as a member of their household, Aoko jokingly gifts him a white dog collar. As insulting as it seems, he takes it as an act of kindness, even though it's been magically enchanted so that Aoko can choke him with it if he ever steps out of line. Soujuro's way of living conflicts with the girls, but they all start to learn from each other and appreciate their differences. As a sign of goodwill, he gifts the two of them tickets to an aquarium in the neighboring city. Aoko and Alice, who had been arguing with each other prior, put their tension aside and have a good time. They pledge that, if they survive the year, they'll take a trip to the beach in the summer. While they're out, Touko takes the chance to waltz straight into their home and confront Soujuro, who has no clue about the family drama. She appears to exchange pleasantries, but from the shadows, she sends an army of 30 puppet familiars to attack Aoko and Alice in the subway. Obviously, this spoiled their fun, so Alice resorts to summoning her Wonder Snatch, which turns the subway into a bloody mess. With so many doll corpses to inspect, Alice reasons that these dolls aren't from an old master, but rather someone arrogant enough to use such expensive familiars as mere fodder. Only Touko springs to mind, and sure enough, just as Touko cozies up to Soujuro, she takes off her glasses and makes her intentions clear. With her mystic eye, she paralyzes Soujuro and tells him to join her as her plaything, else she target him like Aoko's other belongings. He refuses, so Touko promises to return as his enemy, but not before stealing Aoko's favorite teacup as a symbol of things to come. When the girls get home just after Touko leaves, Alice slaps Soujuro for letting an intruder into the mansion. Of course, neither she nor Aoko told him about Touko, and they realize they can't exactly blame him for welcoming a woman claiming to be Aoko's sister. Thus, they explain the situation, and this peaceful life of theirs takes a turn for the worst. On Christmas Eve, snow falls heavily on Misaki Town. While most people are celebrating the holiday with joy, Aoko and Alice prepare for a violent confrontation. It's here that Soujuro mentions that Touko's hair is short, which is important because, as we've seen before at Kitsyland, a mage's hair is very valuable. Touko used to have long hair, so the fact that she cut it means she's invested years of magical potential into her assault on the town. They suspect Touko must have used her hair to create a very powerful familiar, but they have no idea about the werewolf they're about to encounter. When communities hold festivals, it often results in a temporary boost to the land's mana, making the night before Christmas the perfect time to strike. Aoko and Alice separate, going out to defend the two remaining sigils from attack. Alice, who goes to Yashirogi Park, is the first to encounter Touko, who shows up with a horde of wild dogs in tow. Alice starts the fight by implementing Diddle Diddle, but it breaks on impact with the ground. Touko has spent the last few days drawing hundreds of runes across the park, putting her at a considerable advantage. Luckily, Alice has her own Mystic Eye of Enchantment, which seals Touko with the image of a metal fence. If she had activated Diddle Diddle, it would have been strong enough to restrain Touko, but not in this compromised state. Touko, on the other hand, has enhanced her own eye to far outclass hers. While pinned in place by suggestion, Alice cannot move as Touko goes in for the kill with a runic shockwave. The Alice that gets hit, however, is not actually her. Recall that Robin can be used as a body double. When the double is hit, its body scatters into a flock of feathers, giving the real Alice time to toss out 5 more copies of Diddle Diddle, which shatter at Touko's feet, creating enough heat to melt the snow right beneath her. Yashirogi Park has no natural water, but by exploiting this loophole, Alice summons forth the Thames Troll. With its massive fist, the troll sweeps across the ground, tearing apart all of Touko's runes. Just when it seems she's lost, Touko calls upon her secret weapon, Bayo. Lug Beowulf is primarily a shapeshifter and can adapt to the situation. He starts out as a wolf, but turns into a gorilla of sorts to smash into the troll and take it down with ease. Returning to wolf form, Bayo tackles Alice to the ground and slashes her abdomen. Her clothes are enchanted for protection, but they do little to hold off Bayo's sword-like claws. Pain pulses through her entire body, but she refuses to show it on her face. The wolf wants to finish the job, but Touko calls him off. Despite her injury, Alice remains conscious enough for Touko to explain how she used her hair to make a contract with Bao, though it seems even with that contract in place, she doesn't have full control. The wolf salivates while watching as Alice's torn flesh starts to regenerate. The Meinster crest permeates through Alice's entire body, speeding up her body's natural healing. Technically, Touko's enemy has never been Alice. She had a good relationship with Alice's mother, and so she shows the Meinster daughter a pathetic glimmer of pity. Touko lifts Alice up and kisses her. More specifically, she transfers mouth to mouth, a special concoction that deprives Alice of using her own mana. It's a rowan, a medicinal herb made from cinders, but it might as well work like a poison. If Alice tries to perform magecraft, the rowan will explode inside her. So long as Alice doesn't retaliate, Touko doesn't mind letting her live. With that, Alice is left in the cold, bleeding while the surrounding dogs encroach upon her. Throwing a bone her way, Touko calls the Kuonji mansion and tells Soujuro where Alice can be found. That said, Touko also warns that if Soujuro goes out to save Alice, she will take it as a declaration of war. Not like that would deter a stubborn guy like him. With less than 10 minutes left to live in this condition, Alice drags herself to a phone booth, only to pass out. She wakes up to Soujuro carrying her up the hill to the mansion. Alice wonders how on earth he was able to reach her in time. That, plus the fact he was willing to come save her in the first place. She tries her best to deny his hospitality, but she's in such a bad state that she can't refuse. Her body's healing still works, but much more slowly than before. Alice lets him bring her back to the mansion, but after a quick break to mend her clothes, they need to get right back outside to help Aoko. Alice won't be able to use magecraft until she fully digests the rowan. The two ride tandem on Aoko's bike to the church, where, unfortunately, Aoko is already being hospitalized. Alice had sent out her chocolate birds to warn everyone in advance, but even then, Touko and Bao already had their way with Aoko. More accurately, Bao had made Aoko her chew toy, chomping into her every which way, till her head barely stayed connected to the rest of her. In a back room of the church, Yuika operates on the shards of Aoko that remain. Just the sight of it is enough for Soujuro to vomit and pass out from shock. In Aoko's favor, the Aozaki crest contains healing spells strong enough to patch her back together, even if her spine was broken in multiple places. I assume this means her grandfather wouldn't have been killed had he still kept the crest. Honestly, it's insane, because we've definitely seen more experienced mages die from much less. As Aoko puts it, the Aozaki specialize in regeneration. She and Alice survived the ordeal, even though it's cost them the last two sigils protecting Misaki's bounded field. There's only about 1 day left before Touko completely takes over the city, and so Aoko stubbornly plans to go back out the following night for a final confrontation. Now that Soujuro knows their enemy is a golden werewolf, he thinks back to the gold-haired boy he saw at the old school building. Back then, he had no way of knowing it was such an important location. Regardless, Soujuro asks why Aoko is willing to go so far to fight her sister. She affirms it's not something she's doing for anyone else, not for her grandfather nor Alice. No, this is a fight she wants to settle for her own sake, to prove her life has meaning. She's not looking for anyone to witness her determination, because she's always watching herself. The girls ask Father Airi to distract Soujuro so that he doesn't follow them to their final battle. At the church, Airi helps Soujuro realize that he envies Aoko for her strong foundation and ego. She has a defined color, unlike him, whose flexibility makes him more of a perpetually blank slate. Airi notes that when Aoko was first made heir, he gave her the chance to flee to Mexico with him and abandon her duty, but she adamantly refused. She simply doesn't back down from a fight. In time, Soujuro figures out he's being distracted from the climax, so he rushes out to the old school building. There, the battle is already underway. Alice can't create any more ploys while she's poisoned, but she can still use ones that were already active. She uses the mirror to mask Aoko's presence, and has Robin impersonate Aoko as a distraction. I assume this means that Robin can only impersonate any given person once. Regardless, these distractions give Aoko enough time to charge the strongest bullet she can. Her bullets have 3 steps or phases of strength. There's snap, draw, and then magic blow. She goes for the third process, firing off a bullet capable of demolishing the entire building behind them. For as devastating as it is, it has no effect on Touko, not when she evokes her stolen magic crests. Aoko's surprise attack is a failure, so she tries to buy Alice time to escape into the forest. Too bad that's where Bao has been waiting. He knocks Alice out, opening the stitches on her abdomen. Since he's still in his human form, Aoko goes to take him out before he can shapeshift. With a magically enhanced kick, she strikes Bayo in the neck with her leg, or rather, she tries to. Instead, her attack is stopped by Bayo's impenetrable golden hair. For once, she shouldn't have gone for the head. In retaliation, Bayo crushes her leg to the bone and shoves her away like a rag doll. Bayo is hungry, but before he can sink his teeth into Aoko, Soujuro arrives with the most angry look of determination possible. All of his fears are tucked beneath a stance of focus. Soujuro intentionally mocks Bayo, calling him a dog, forcing him to go full werewolf. In a blind rage, Bayo charges forward with the same kind of force that demolished Alice's stone golem. However, this is exactly what Soujuro has spent his life training for. Even this wild beast has movements that can be observed and countered. Deep down, beneath that layer of golden fur, lies a weakness. Tapping into his training, Soujuro dodges Bayo's initial swing, landing his own punch right above Bayo's chest. The difference in their strength is immediately apparent, as the collision causes Soujuro's arm to crumple like an accordion. In exchange, though, Bayo gets the wind knocked out of him. The perfect spot at the perfect time was enough to shatter his foundation. As Bayo stumbles to the ground, Soujuro spins around, focusing all his momentum into striking Bayo's heart from behind. In truth, the attack isn't actually fatal, but to a childish werewolf who's never experienced fear on this level, it's enough to send Bayo into a full-blown panic. The mental contrast from seeing this ordinary human go from 0% threat to 1,000 renders Bayo utterly useless on the ground in terror. Aoko looks on, completely shocked at her wounded savior. Even though both of Soujuro's arms are totally mangled, he stands stoically. Touko watches from afar, wondering what the fuck just happened. Normally, Bayo would never lose, but relatively speaking, he was a child who didn't see Soujuro's attack coming. He was too arrogant to even think there was any danger. In opposition, Soujuro put his entire body on the line as a trained weapon. Completely selfless in his pursuit, he knew it would wreck his arms, but he continued as though that were part of the plan. She regrets having spared him earlier. With a smile of relief, Soujuro steps in to help Aoko stand, extending his more functioning right arm. Before Aoko can take his hand, though, Touko sends a blade of wind that chops him in two at the waist. Aoko witnesses firsthand as her savior hits the snow in 2 heavy chunks. This is the last straw, the final step needed to push Aoko off the deep end. Touko mocks that they're at a stalemate now, but that's definitely not true. By casting aside her fears, by fully embracing her life as a mystic, Aoko opens up her path to the root and activates Magic Blue. She confronts the Red Death that's always watching her. To use true magic is a sin, a providence meant for gods, not humans. By taking this step into the abyss, Aoko lets the Red Death kill her humanity. That means another valid interpretation of this red shadow is that it's there to symbolize Aoko's fear of fully committing to her life as not just a mage, but a full-blown magician. Touko's been seeking the truth of the root, so the opportunity to at least witness magic through someone else still holds value. Sadly for her, very little of what Aoko experiences can be explained. Memories flood her mind, and she sees visions of the past, all the way back to the start of creation. As knowledge flows into her, Aoko passes up the vastness of the universe in exchange for a much smaller prize, the life of one young man. Time around her begins to dilate, changing seasons in a matter of heartbeats. In the end, the land transforms into a vast field of white flowers, a recreation of one of Soujuro's most precious memories. At the same time, she transforms into a sexy bombshell badass. Oh baby, I love this design. Her hair turns into a vibrant crimson as she stands with conviction far beyond her years. At first, Touko scoffs at how unimpressive it is, until she fully realizes what Aoko just did. A proper, singular explanation of Magic Blue's true abilities are never given to us. However, I feel confident saying that it can be best described as negotiating time itself. It's not time travel, not in the sense where one can go and visit any time period they desire. Rather, it's all about exchanging time, rearranging events on the temporal axis. With that in mind, Aoko makes 2 separate transactions. First, she borrows 10 years of Soujuro's memories in exchange for 10 years worth of her memories in the future. The Aoko we see now is Aoko with 10 more years of experience and training, closer to the kind of mage we see her as in Tsukihime or Melty Blood. The process of fast-forwarding 10 full years results in a red shift, which leaves its mark on her hair color. Overall, this is a relatively harmless transaction. It'll return to normal after she cuts her connection to the root. She only needs this strength to take Touko down, and once that's done, both her memories and Soujuro's can revert to how they were. Her second transaction is the kicker. She rewinds the past 5 minutes of Soujuro's time, returning him to a state before Touko killed him. Aoko then takes those 5 minutes and places them far in the future. When Touko finds out about this, she fears that the exchange will place an intense burden on the universe, serving to accelerate its eventual demise. The energy expended to propel Soujuro's death into the future will ultimately create so much heat that it'll be as destructive as smashing an asteroid onto the planet. Even if Aoko were to return that time to the past at a later point, it would still harm the universe's overall lifespan. Humans may never have to experience the fallout from this, but that doesn't mean she should toy with the universe for her own selfish whims. Stubbornly though, Aoko pledges she'll fix that later, but for now, she's gotta win this fight. It goes without saying, but Aoko is way more talented now than she was just a moment prior. Her output of magic bullets seems endless, and in defense, Touko flees to inside the school building. By taking this to her own workshop, Touko gains the advantage of all the runes she set up ahead of time. Aoko remains undeterred, charging forward while dodging all of her sister's attacks. Normally this would be impossible, but Aoko evades the assault through multiple second-long bursts of time travel, making it so that each projectile lands at the wrong time to hit her. One by one, Aoko shatters the crystal slabs that Touko uses to cast her spells. Upon getting close enough, the sisters unleash their remaining energy. Touko's red runes utterly fail to suppress Aoko's blue ether. The blast tears away Touko's borrowed crests, sending her crashing into the wall in tatters. Even her mystic eye is ruptured from Aoko's kick. Aoko had reached the Gate of Akasha, but never let the root consume her. Despite witnessing what other mages could only dream of, Aoko admits that she really can't remember what she saw in that moment. Just as she's about to slay her sister, her hand is stopped by Soujuro. He tries to convince her not to go through with it, and while his sentiments are naive, Aoko can't help but understand his feelings because right now, she still shares his memories. Reluctantly, and I mean very reluctantly, Aoko decides to spare her sister, instead choosing to place a curse on Touko such that if she steps foot in Misaki Town ever again, she'll turn into a frog. Soujuro's kicked out of the building while Aoko places the formula on her sister's body, though if it were me, I might have stayed to watch. In the end, Touko hobbles out of town, and Aoko returns to her younger self. Soujuro carries her home, accompanied by Alice. He gets his memories back, and Aoko loses all the knowledge that she'll gain back over the next decade. Even the field of white flowers returns to how it should be. That just leaves one more issue. This past month, Soujuro was staying at the mansion until Aoko could find a way to erase his memories of magecraft. Now that it's time for her to visit her family at the Aozaki house, her grandfather asks her to bring Soujuro along. She takes this to mean that he will perform the memory wipe. To ensure they don't run into each other again, Aoko expects to have her own memories of their time together wiped as well. On a snowy night, they take the train to the edge of Misaki and walk through the rice fields to her old home. Along the path, they discuss a number of things, admitting it's kinda pointless given they'll soon forget anyway. She goes to greet her parents while Soujuro heads out back to visit the old man, or his lingering spirit anyway. Aoko's grandfather takes no responsibility for the conflict between family heirs. He insists their feuding is born of their own volition, not his. While he's fascinated by how Soujuro has influenced his granddaughter, he deems their time together inconsequential. They'll go separate ways eventually without his interference. Grandfather leaves a message for Aoko that if she insists on erasing his memories after all, she should do it herself. This gives them more time to be together. As Aoko and Soujuro return to Alice's mansion, he wishes her a happy new year as the city bells ring at midnight. In light of everything that's happened, the prospect of moving into the future with him brings her a genuine smile. She keeps making excuses, but deep down, she values his companionship. Sometime later, Aoko spends a lazy Sunday digging through the Kuonji estate's library. After a long time, she finally discovers a book she can use to erase Soujuro's memories. It details a Nordic rune the gods used to erase the memory of a Valkyrie. In fact, Aoko recognizes this book as the same one Alice had been reading back when they were first dealing with Soujuro. Alice knew about this book the entire time and kept it hidden in the annals of her library. Happily, Aoko follows suit, closing the book and placing it where it'll be even harder to find. The boy they saw as a threat is now clearly their beloved friend. 1 year later from that, we have one final event. Alice, in a matter quite more welcoming than usual, offers to host a birthday party for the old man Yorihiko. They decide to invite all their friends for a long weekend at the Kuonji estate. This humble party spins out of control, turning into a wacky murder mystery that's as absurd as it is sensible. Long story short, Soujuro words the invitations poorly, and Kojika winds up arriving at the party 1 day before everyone else. To show her some hospitality, he brings out some tea and snacks, but the snacks he chooses happen to be Alice's ploy, sweethearts. The moment Kojika takes a bite out of the magical ploy, it tries to grant her wish for a more fulfilling youth. Remember how I said she felt like she was wasting her high school years working her ass off? Sweethearts gets the idea to trap all the partygoers in the mansion for a game where anyone who laughs gets killed. Disguised as a doppelganger of Soujuro, she incites conflict by setting up humorous ways to die that make the other guests laugh, perpetuating a cycle of silliness that can only be stopped when Kojika realizes the truth. When she does, Sweethearts tempts her with the opportunity to make her high school days last much longer. But at this point, Tobimaru has already been killed during the game. What's the point of youth if the boy you like is already dead? Kojika rejects the offer, and the weekend comes to an end with everyone's memory of the game being erased. This is the only chapter in the novel that features May Riddell Archulot, who barges in midway for not being invited to what she thinks is Alice's birthday party. With only a year having passed since her defeat, Touko has already figured out that she can circumvent the frog spell by using a puppet body. Luckily, she's not here to kill her sister, but instead she sneaks into Aoko's room and drunkenly sings karaoke to old enka songs. In that same year, Bayo's contract with Touko expires, and with his newfound freedom, he becomes rather affectionate towards Soujuro and jumps at the chance to celebrate with him. It's honestly amazing how forgiving these guys can be, when just a year ago, they were quite literally tearing each other to pieces. Oh well, it's not like any of them are partying with Shinji or Gilles de Rais. So there you have it. Witch on the Holy Night is a fantastic visual novel. It's definitely the most beautiful work in the whole medium, and I highly advise you to experience it for yourselves. Links to purchase the game will be in the description. Going forward, let me know your favorite part of this story in the comments below. Thanks for watching!
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always, celebrate your fandom! I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters. Video Gamer 75, Elise Trash for Skinco, Stephen Elak, Samuel Gersten, The Nonchalant Ostrich, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Lord Omagoden, Free Brick, RNG or Shuffles 1498, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Link Pendrago, King Kobo, Observer Bellis, Flash Daniel, Eldon Yarbrough, Horsemen of Justices, James Hewitt, Uncanny EXP, Matthew McAfee, Game King 352, Caitlin P, Vladimir Ovna, Succubus Sakura, Jonathan Padua, The Taz 96, President Irina Vladimirovna Putina, Maxwell's Demon, Kengo X77, SF Giants Fan Mike, Akakaze Yume, and user C100CAD1. Thank you all so much.